Now let's take a look at the Accounts Payable module. Back and beyond, let's first take a look at the vendor setup. Payables vendor screen. I'll go ahead and select an existing vendor. We can see you can configure the expected types of information here: address information, vendor ID, vendor name. You can specify payment terms, vendor classes. You can put them on hold. You can specify default expense account. You can specify default payment methods, whether they need to have separate checks or any other special processing. You can specify their 1099 information. And you can also jump to various transaction details or transaction summary about this vendor. There's also notes and attachments capabilities here. You'll actually see this on a number of Beyond screens. Actually, most screens you can attach documents to or take notes on. And that's functionality that's available out of the box, no special setup required. So with the notes, it's a pretty rich set of note-taking abilities to log notes, who made the notes, descriptions, things like that. And attachments. You can attach files, attach URLs or things like that. I'll just attach a sample file here. Maybe there's some sort of PDF contract with this vendor or something like that that I want to attach in the system. I attach it, you can give it a name, attach, and there it is. Available for anyone else in the system to utilize if they're looking at this vendor. Once our vendors are set up, then it's usually time to enter some vouchers or invoices for them. Do that in the vendor invoice and adjustment screen. There is a lot of functionality in this screen as well. This is sort of becomes the go-to place for data entry. Voucher in here, you can regular vendor invoice, or you can enter adjustments. The adjustments can be either positive or negative to be able to adjust a balance up or down for the vendor. You can change the remit to information if you need to have the check go to someone else. You can specify recurring invoices here. Similar to the GL functionality, you can specify how often they are, when they happen, how many times you want them to happen. If you want to pay the document right away, or if you don't want it paid at all, you could specify that information here as well. If you want to put the document on payment hold because maybe the vendor is not approved, this way this invoice is going to be flagged as such until someone comes along and releases that. You can make some comments about what it is we're doing. You could even pay the document right away. You can enter, if you're going to hand write a check to them, you can enter that information here. Or if you need to print a check for them, you can enter the amount, save, and print the check directly from this. If I select an existing one, we can see that you do have options for entering quantity, unit cost, totals, the GL account that you're going to hit. If it's 1099 related, you can specify the 1099 box. If it's project related, you can specify the project. All the good information you'd expect to see. I'll pull up another invoice here. Here's an invoice that hasn't been paid yet. If for some reason I needed to reverse it, instead of having to do adjusting entries or doing weird things like cutting a zero check or anything like that, if I need to get rid of this invoice, there's a simple reverse vendor invoice button. I can click that and reverse it with a click of a button. So again, there's a lot of functionality in this screen. Once the documents are entered, usually the next step is to try and pay them. So if we go to Payables, Payment Selection, and I will give my payment selection a description. And there's some filter criteria that I could specify if I'm looking for particular documents to pay, or I could just update the list and get me everything that needs to be paid. I can then pick and choose whether I want to pay all of these things or not. Maybe I only want to pay these bottom three. If I'm happy with this, I save and I complete my payment selection. And now these invoices are ready to be paid by a check. So I'll go to Financials, Payables, Print Checks. This takes me to a screen and shows me the checks that I've already selected, and gives me the option to select what bank account I want to pay them out of. You can set up multiple bank accounts, and each of these bank accounts can then be tied to a specific check format. Within Beyond Software, we have a number of built-in check formats. We have 5 different check formats that correspond to various deluxe checks layouts. You can pick one of these layouts and actually tie it against a checking account. So each of your checking accounts can have their own default check format. Once those are selected, we can run our check report. And here's our checks. We're happy with that. We're then presented with an option to keep, delete, or void those checks. So if check number 4 simply didn't print at all, I could choose to delete it. Or if check number 5 got stuck in the printer and has now been ruined, I could void that check. Or I could simply keep all, delete all, or void all of them. I'll say OK. And that completes check printing. In addition to printing checks, you can enter manual checks after the fact. If we go to Financials, Payables, Manual Payments, there's a number of options here. You can enter a manually handwritten check. I could print a one-off check directly from this screen. I could even enter if I maybe paid that invoice with a credit card. I can select that I paid it with a credit charge. If for some reason I needed to void a check, we can do that pretty easily. Payables, void checks. I can go look for the check by check number, or I can just list out, maybe I know it was from this bank, list out all the checks I've written to that bank account. So maybe I just want to void check 13. Click Save, done. That check has now been voided, and that's all I had to do so. In terms of reporting, similar to General Ledger, one of the nice places to start is the Vendor Activity Console. This Activity Console out of the box will display a detailed list of all the documents in my payable system, but we can pretty quickly rearrange things here to make it a little more useful. I can grab the period and drag it up to the top. Then maybe I'll grab the vendor and group by that as well. So now I have a grouping, a summary of all my activity for this period. If I expand on that, now I have summary of all this activity by each vendor. If I expand on that, now I have the detailed list of all my activity for that particular vendor, the amounts, the document types, and all that good information. If I have a question about a specific line, again, I have this hyperlink capability. I can click on it, and it jumps me directly to invoice number 35, so I can see the details about what that was. There are also a number of sort of classical reports as well. Reports, run a report. Maybe we'll take a look at the AP aging. And again, we're presented with lots of options in terms of filtering or levels of detail, summary of detail, aging as of dates, our aging buckets, 30, 60, 90 days. I can override all of this or change it or leave it alone if I like. I'll view the report. And my report is displayed. And just like in other reports within the system, I can then print it to the printer, export it to a file, or even add it to my favorites menu if this is something I want to run going forward.